Ladies and gentlemen, on a glorious autumn day a year ago, I entered the auditorium of the United Steelworkers Building on Cecil Street, and I came into a simulation of the world of 1930s Toronto. The occasion was the book launch for Anne Dublin's new book, 44 Hours or Strike. She and her team had created an event showcasing period costumes, newspapers of the day, music, rousing union songs, and Depression-era refreshments. For myself, who had yet to read the book, the experience was the beginning of a profoundly moving history lesson. The jury of the Canadian Jewish Literary Awards was impressed by the uniqueness and originality of her theme, which has been rarely, if ever, dealt with in the field of youth literature. It is about a bitter 1931 labor dispute in the Toronto garment industry and the fight for better working conditions, set against the harsh reality of immigrant life, particularly that of the Jews from Eastern Europe. The novel's two teenage protagonists, sisters Sophie and Rose, navigate life's challenges against a backdrop of historical personalities and events. The narrative does not shy away from difficult issues, but in the end, its realism does not preclude optimism. The story is written with passion, reflecting Anne's family background in the garment industry and her commitment to social justice. 44 Hours or Strike is a memorable and important addition to the world of young adult literature. I am honored to present this award to Anne with congratulations on behalf of my colleagues and best wishes for continued success in your future endeavors.
Thank you, Judy. It's a pleasure to be here today with my fellow writers, honorees, book lovers, friends, family. 1 year ago, when we launched this book, yes, we had music, and I promise I won't make you listen to me sing today, but I do want to tell you very much about where this book came from. You might say that the garment industry is in my blood. When I was a young girl, I would go down to the cellar in our house on Manning Avenue and watch as my father, Morris, sewed on his old Singer sewing machine. I would listen to his stories, many of which were about his work as a tailor. Here are some of them, very briefly. In the city of Sosnowiec, Poland, he apprenticed as a tailor right after his bar mitzvah. He had to quit school to help support the family. He and my mother escaped from Poland to the Soviet Union at the outbreak of World War II. They bought a small manual sewing machine, and they eked out a living during those 2 years before the Soviet Union and Germany went to war. Mom would turn the wheel while Dad sewed. In 1941, Dad was drafted into the Soviet Army. He survived finally by getting a job sewing uniforms behind the lines. After the war, they returned to Poland. They found nothing, nobody. They went to a displaced persons camp in Salzburg, Austria, where my brother Max over there and I were born. During that time that we were waiting to come to Canada, Dad managed to find a few tailoring jobs to earn a little money. And finally, in 1948, our family was allowed to come to Canada, partly because Dad was a tailor. So you see, even though I can't sew very well, I still remember those stories. And in fact, I have my father's sewing machine in my home right now. Stories upon stories. That's what we do. We tell stories. A few years ago in 2013, the Rana Plaza building in Bangladesh collapsed, killing 1,129 people and injuring at least 2,500 more. And around that time, I was writing a book review about the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire in New York City in 1911, where 146 workers, mostly young women, perished. And I began to think that in many places in the world, working conditions in the garment industry haven't improved much from how they used to be over 100 years ago in cities such as New York, Montreal, and yes, even here in Toronto. So I decided to write a historical novel about workers in the garment industry. The central event would be the ILGWU strike in Toronto in 1931. The workers went on strike to demand safer working conditions, a decent wage, recognition of their union, and a 44-hour week. As Judy told you, the two main characters in the book are sisters, Sophie and Rose, and how they get involved in the strike and the consequences are what make this book. I'm just going to read the first few paragraphs from the book, 44 Hours or Strike. Sophie is 14 years old, and she's just begun working in a dressmaking factory in the Balfour Building on Spadina Avenue near Adelaide. It was Tuesday afternoon, almost evening, on a cold gray day in February 1931. The whir and clatter of machines dinned in Sophie's ear, her right knee pressed against the lever of the sewing machine as the cotton material slid steadily, evenly under her fingers. Her back was aching, and her eyes were sore. Her nose was full of the stuffiness of the fabric, the dust from the cutting machine, and the sweat of other workers. "Hurry up," a raspy voice said in her ear. "You won't make your quota at this rate." Sophie kept her head down and tried to sew faster. She mustn't lose this job. Mama was counting on her. She couldn't see the needle as it raced through the fabric, but her fingers kept pushing the cloth forward in the same motion, faster, faster. In spite of the cold room, sweat dripped from her forehead onto her cheeks. She couldn't take the time to wipe it away. Sophie had heard that sometimes when a worker sewed too quickly, a needle went right through her finger. But she couldn't slow down. She had to keep going. The foreman didn't care about her fingers as long as she didn't get blood on the cloth. She didn't want to think about what might happen. She didn't want to think about anything. She had to keep going, going, going. My hope for this book is that people, young and old, will continue to work for social justice. As the Pirkei Avot says, it is not incumbent upon you to complete the work, but neither are you at liberty to desist from it. And before I go, I have a few people I must thank. First, of course, the members of the jury, the chair of these wonderful awards where Jewish Canadian content is recognized and applauded. Thank you to the sponsors of these awards. You'll see them in the pamphlet. I don't need to name them. Margie Wolf. Where are you, Margie? My publisher at Second Story Press. This is my 5th book that Margie has published. I thank her from the bottom of my heart, along with the wonderful creative team at Second Story Press. And just a little personal note, I remember Adam Furstenberg. In those early attempts at writing short stories, he encouraged me, even though I was writing for grown-ups and not for children. Thank you very much.